Hi, I'm Francois from Production Music Live, today with Producer Notes, and we're taking a look at Afro House styles of artists like Caiiro, Moojo, Starving Yet Full, Adam Port, a reference track called NG and we have a fully arranged track here using only Ableton stock effects and instruments, nothing else. And it's part of the Afro House Start to Finish Academy bundle. It's the project file called Thika here in the files folder with other project files. It's a fully arranged track, around 7 minutes long. Let's have a quick skim through the arrangement. We have an intro. So building it up, then bringing in some more drum elements. By the way, this is a more sample-heavy production than usual. We are using samples for the pianos and for the bass here. Usually we tend to do that with MIDI and a virtual instrument, but we have so many nice samples in this kit here, also a full vocal pack that we're using in this case as well, that it's kind of fun to make it a bit more easy, more visual, and use samples. So we're filtering in the vocals down there, and then the typical Afro plucks are coming in. And then we go into our first drop where we're playing the chord progression and the bass notes change. So it builds up and then it filters the bass notes out over time, and we are falling into the first break where we are still repeating the chord progression. And let's quickly listen into that without the vocals. Then we're bringing the vocals back and building that up. That was the beginning part of this video. I'm putting a full playback at the end of the video. And then we're building up towards our second main drop, which sort of plays everything together again. And then we're going into the outro. So let's quickly skim through that a bit. And while doing that, we're introducing another climactic synth melody instrument. And that one gets added on top and signals to the listener that this drop, the second drop here, is a bit more climactic than the first one. Yeah, then we are winding it down, and then we go into the stable bass notes again, where we are playing our outro to mix it into the next track. Okay, so that's the track. Again, full playback at the end of the video. You can pick up the project file with the Afro Start to Finish Bundle Academy. And the kick bass group sounds itself this way. In the main part and in the break parts. So this one is trying to not make it too complicated here. We are in Afro House. It's a bit more loose. We have more organic sounding instruments. We are not processing our low end here as we would in melodic techno or something. And for this project file, we used a lot of samples. You can also do this with MIDI and then process your serum or something. But in this case, it worked with the samples at hand. Let's listen to the drum loops. The entire group gets sent into the reverb, which is 3.646 seconds, and we have an echo on the other return channel. And then in the drop, we'll take a closer look at that in a minute. Our instruments group sounds like this. And our vocals are two tracks with samples, extra recorded for the Afro House Academy, for the Afro House offering. Here, this one is getting sent into the long tail reverb and echoes, and the main one gets sent in there as well. And on the group, there's not much going on. We're just sometimes filtering it in with this, almost like this telephone effect here in the beginning to sort of introduce drama. And then we have our effects group here with Atmos. Some wooden feelings. And we have these growls. That's a nice one. And this tonal riser. Okay, so let's go through some of these elements one by one, and I'm starting with the kick and bass in our drop part. So the kick is printed audio here from a sample from PML. Short kick, as you can see, this is kind of nicely visual how these bass and kick, and you could argue this is a tom sound somehow, how they are distributed to not interfere with one another. This is the bass sound below it, which is sidechained to the kick. And so that's our kick sound together with the top kick, let's say. And then we put the bass in there as well. It has this wacky pitch effect on it, which if you like it is great. If you don't like it, then I'd go back and synthesize it with Wavetable or Serum. In this case, we used it, and it's actually the sample that gets pitched up with the warp complex mode. 9 semitones here. And then the next sample part is 6 semitones up. And then the next one is, I don't know, 4. Oh, that's only 1. So we are pitching that thing around. And essentially making it work. Now you could do this differently. There's the arguments to make that you don't do it this way or you do it this way. But at the end of the day, it also matters how does that sound in the sum of the effects. And you can do this differently, that's fair, but it also works this way. So let's take another approach. We have 30 producer notes videos on this channel where we did it differently. Why not do it this way as well? Sometimes it's easy to work with samples. We have a Reese bass here on this track, which is basic fine line bass from the Ableton instruments. If you have Ableton Suite, you can just look it up. So this one is playing in our break part. And it's an operator from Ableton. That's where the sound is coming from. And the MIDI information is A, F sharp, C sharp, and B. Okay, so let's move over to our drums group and maybe start here in the beginning at the intro. Okay, so we are filtering this one up and we're using a bunch of shaker loops here from the Afro House pack, the percussive Afro House pack, and the percussive house pack. But they are all part of the project file samples folder as well. So this is what we're filtering in over time. We have this shaker loop. It's a bit late on the last one. You can see that. If this is my position 4 in the beat, you can see the action is actually late here. Yeah, that's a bit wacky. And if we combine that with the kick, it's nice how that thing sounds natural because it's really not on point. It's just late. And another shaker. And another shaker. And all of them combined. They all have a different nature. We're not doing much. We're just cleaning up the low end here and then filtering those in. And next we are adding this perk element on top of these shakers, and it goes and then we're adding a hi-hat loop on top of this one with this more Latin setup. It's like a bit more driving the rhythm. And then another very stereo hi-hat loop here, or shaker loop you could argue. And that one fills out the frequency range. And what do we have here? This is kind of at night around the fire. Singing and playing the bongos and the percussions. And not really being on point always. And then we have this Foley that goes together with this hi-hat loop up here. Okay, and all together. Okay, so that's much more natural somehow than, let's say, a typical melodic techno drumming setup. And let's combine that with the kick and bass. So this is our foundation in the drum loops, and now we have claps and snare rolls sitting on top of that, and also this one hi-hat thing here. So let's take a look at this one quickly. It's a noise hat. And so what's going on? It's this super long note playing this noise loop, and then it's getting looped at a certain point. That's what it sounds like if I'm just playing a note on my keyboard. So the information is already in the loop, and then we're just playing a long note with this loop. It's kind of an interesting, different technique to use. This is what it sounds like, and together in the sum with the other drum elements. That's somehow how we are supporting our typical Afro House pluck sound that comes in later. And on top of that, we have these claps. Let's play them together with the kick to identify the pattern. And then the snare rolls are coming in to support that as well. So you see how this is playing all the time in our drop, which is interesting. So we have this constant snare roll in the background. And now if you listen in, you can hear the snare roll playing in the background all the time. Really driving this forward. And if we go to the main drop here, the climactic drop, we have emphasis on the claps. So we have two more. We really signal, hey, this is the main thing here with our drums as well. And the second one is doing this. So same pattern as the one that we used to play, and then we are supporting even more with these snaps. Bunch of claps layered. Just to signal that, you know, arrangement wise, to signal this drop is intended to drop heavier than that drop. And this is signaled through the claps, and it's also signaled through this instrument that's coming up here. Or which one? The synth down here, this one that's not playing in the first drop. And we are going over to the instruments groups now to take a look at the pads. C sharp minor. And we're playing the Sandman pad from Ableton Instruments. It's sidechained, and what's on the group, we just clean up some EQing and lift the high frequencies in the instruments group, and then at times we are automating a reverb on top of everything. But the setup here is pretty straightforward. We have a pad sample supporting this. It's an Atmos sample from our Afro House kit, but also part of this project file here as well. And we sort of pitched it down 3 semitones from its base. And then it gets sidechained and low end cleaned up. Let's play it together with the other pad. Beautiful. This super nice foundation already. And then we have this short drone at the beginning with the choir steam from operator. If you hear something like this in solo, you're always thinking, really, am I going to put that into the track? But it's the sum of the parts. Okay, next we have this arpeggio, ARP1, quick one. Adding in this Afro vibe. Velocities are important here. We're emphasizing on the third one. These are 16th notes. And so essentially we're playing the third on top of our C sharp. And now sometimes you can argue, is this really necessary? Is that a good way? You could also do subtractive. Granted, fair point, you can also take this down, do subtracted, but we are so quiet here. This is not really a sound that gets messed up by it, so we keep it that way. It's called downwards retro ARP. And we have another one. So we have this short synth sound here as well. Nice pattern that works well. It's also 16th notes, and we're sending it around your ears with the auto pan, and then we are sidechaining it as well. And sometimes we're filtering it in, and sometimes we're filtering it out. Over time in the arrangement at the end, for example, when we want to wind it down. And the next pluck we have is this more straightforward metal pluck. So it's from the metal ARP pluck. If we quickly look for it, just to see where all this is coming from, we are coming from Tension Guitar Plucked Metal ARP pluck. That's the preset. You find it in Ableton Suite, and the MIDI setup. On our root note. And notice we often leave a lot of belly to these sounds to make them sound more organic, to have them not too clean. And here's a nice piano pattern. You see fades here and fades there, so to make sure it's not getting harsh at the end of the MIDI. So this is our chord progression here, and now we're like, okay, cool, let's use it, works fine. And then we drag it over onto a MIDI track and let Ableton do its magic, because if you sort of take something like this and you're saying, hey, I want the harmonies, can you please process that for me? Then you'll get the MIDI, and now you have to do a little bit of cleaning up, but it's definitely a nice way to move your samples into MIDI. That's exactly what we did here. So we can play them also with MIDI instruments like the keys, chord.keys. And if you're just looking at these chords here without including the bass notes, we have A major 7, followed by B major, followed by C sharp minor, followed by B major with an added 9th. super nice. You could also argue maybe this is a Lydian mode. Let's go back and take a look at this sound here using the same progression. So this is an octave lower, and here we are using wavetable Agra keys with 2 oscillators activated, and we are messing around with something like a saw wave here, but that's sort of taken a bit to the extreme. Filtering out low end, sidechaining it, and so we are filling up the frequency range for our pads. So this one acts more like a piano, like the upper part of a piano, like kind of keys part, and then we have something gnarly in the middle. And then below that we have these strings here. Again, for the mellow part, an octave higher than this synth. Very nice, this last chord. And then we have the synth melody on top of that. Basic peak lead. Also with wavetables set to mono with a glide to 150 milliseconds. So it glides nicely from one note into another. Yeah, and again, the processing in this track is super straightforward, nothing crazy. Let's play it all together. It's simple, but it's nice. I really enjoy this one. Super nice track. Here we have a vocal chop. The whole choir, kinda. And here we have a chop at the beginning. Okay, and so we have different phrases for the vocals. You can listen to all of them in the playback at the end of the video. There it all makes sense. We are filtering it in, and then we are playing different parts of the vocal, but we're also leaving room for the instruments to play their part. And in the main drop, as you can see, we're just using them as shots, and we just want to get the drive of the instruments through, and also this drive of this melody that gets filtered up, like that's the mono gliding melody here that gets filtered up and back down to have this a bit more as a protagonist on the stage during that time of the arrangement, sort of the climax. And okay, last elements we wanted to look at here are our Atmos and effects section. Rainy Day in the Forest. And this sounds a bit as if you have to clean up your toolbox in the snow. And a riser. Following a long riser, we have the impact. Super straightforward. We have this tonal riser here. Yeah, and this has a nice organic feel to it, which makes it perfect for this style. And this one might be my favorite sample in this track. Nice. I forgot one thing, the whoop, of course, Afro House. We need a whoop. Here's the whoop. And it's positioned in position 4 of this bar. And also in the main part. Alright, so there's our setup. Nicely arranged track, very sample heavy. Let me close them more or less, these instruments and drums groups for a bit, so we have a bit of an overview here. What's important? You need the vocals, obviously. Those really make a difference for the overall vibe of this entire genre. And then in the instruments, you want to make sure, if you have such a nice piano melody, why not use it? And then you can take the MIDI and play keys along with it. So typical organic traditional elements do make sense in this genre and will work nicely. You have that with Keinemusik, you have that with all kinds of artists. Almost everybody's using the grand piano or a piano in their tracks. You need shakers, you need these more Latin grooves, some percussions, percussion foley. This is definitely needed to get the grooves and the drums right, and a bunch of shakers in the main part. And overall, I'd argue the rules are a bit more loose in this genre, so you can get away with more stuff than in other genres as well. That's maybe also one of the key takeaways. And then we just want to throw in some of these, you know, ear candy Afro elements like synth loops, like chants, and more chants. Yeah, and then traditional simple arrangement, an intro, introduce your vocals, have the first time of the drop, then have a break, and then you basically repeat but backwards. You then play the drop and then you play the intro as an outro as well. So not making it too complicated. This is a club mix here. You could also make this shorter for Spotify. Then you probably start with a quick break in front of this drop, then bring the drop, and then basically try to make this build-up part half of the length, maybe even make this half of the length, bring the drop again, and conclude it without the outro. And then you're going down to, like, say 4 minutes or something. That would also work. Alright, I hope you enjoyed this session. If you want to support the work here and get something in return, check out the links in the description to the great Afro House Start to Finish Academy bundle with all these project files, tracks like this one, fully arranged, vocal sample pack, these types of vocals. That's exactly what you need for this style. Also serum presets and midis in there, and you can also check the links in the description to the percussive Afro pack, to more Afro House sound packs, to a music theory class, and if you want to get it all, get the everything bundle from Production Music Live with all different styles and more vocal packs and drum packs and courses included as well. It's the fantastic deal. Thank you for your time and attention. I'll talk to you again soon, and now we'll have a full playthrough.
yami ungathele mina uthika mina tohamba sholobele agutithika enhlizweni yami enhlizweni